Of course, I've got more Sun and Moon in you for y'all today. I love this format. You're going to get a ton of it while we have the tournament going on, so I hope you can appreciate that. Always am here to spread the good word of our NU past gens, because I think people, you got to respect the boomer tiers. And this isn't even really a boomer tier, but it's one of the best bastions of NU in my opinion. And I want to see more people playing it, man. So of course, you enjoy NU Ultits content. Make sure you subscribe if not already subscribed. We're going to be pumping out a lot of this over the next couple of months. Really for the rest of the year. NU Classic has started up, so you're going to get a lot of this. Of course, if you still enjoy our current gen NU, subscribe too, man. On the way to 10k subs by the end of the year. I really appreciate it. If you're not yet subscribed, go and subscribe. If you are subscribed, leave a like, man, and hit the bell so that you don't miss uploads. I've heard some people, sometimes they just don't get the uploads in the little subscription box. But you hit that bell, YouTube will tell you. YouTube will let you know when the Lord is here to provide. Now, I got two series for y'all today. First up, Kiyo versus, I don't know who Stampy is, but Kiyo's playing. And in the second series, Drud, normally I'd say known more for DPP, NU versus Stories, who came around a lot more in Sword and Shield, has continued playing into Scarlet and Violet. So we got some very fun games going on today. In our first battle, we even get to see some NU Hail, not Snow, Hail. Now, those of you that played in Gen 8 NU will remember, we actually ended up basically banning Snow from the tier, about as literally as we could. And we banned Slush Rush, we banned Abusers at points, we banned Aurora Veil at points. This is a very storied type of archetype that dealt with a lot of controversy through the tier's history. And so seeing it in a more balanced state is certainly an interesting thing. And as I look at the two teams, I look at Kiyo's opposition, and I see two Pokemon that are very, very problematic. Comfy, for starters, there's really not a great check here. If this is physical Decidueye, I think it's a fine check. Like, SD Decid with, like, whether it's Sinister Arrow Raid, or even if it's just Never-Ending Nightmare with Poltergeist, I think... I said Poltergeist like that's a move. It runs Sinister Arrow Raid, so if it's like Z physical Decid, it could definitely check this. Kind of sort of similar to how Delmise works, where they're just so bulky, and then they're strong enough to KO Comfy and ignore the boosts. You also have the Sandslash, but of course that is contingent on a couple things. One, that you have your weather up, and then if weather's down, you're contingent on this being Jolly with Iron Head, and this being not faster than Jolly Sandslash. It depends. A lot of the standard ones of these only outspeed Incineroar, but I like to go a little faster, and I run speed for Jolly Decid, because I think SD Decid's a menace. But I also think that Miss Magius is really dirty. This team of Kiyo's is just really slow when the weather isn't there. And although Kiyo has ways to, like, tank a hit and follow up with heavy damage, there's not a resistance, and the team is, again, naturally slower without weather, so it's going to be a bit tricky. You're going to have to see Kiyo really utilize his, frankly, his weather chip and potentially even the Comfy to contain that Miss Magius. So as we get into the start, Incid versus Abomasnow, and turn 1 was an absolute banger. There's really not a switch in, so Kiyo Mega Evolves and dies to Flare Blitz. I don't even know if that's a roll. This is a roll for later, by the way. If it's just SD Incid, it'll be looking at Abomasnow Mega. This is uninvested Abomasnow. Flare Blitz always cooked it. So, I'll be honest. Sometimes you don't have a play. Kiyo, again, at the end of the day, he Mega Evolved because he didn't expect Flare Blitz. He expected like a knocker or you, right? And you may as well Mega there so that you get the power. But, yeah, unfortunately, there's nothing to resist Flare Blitz, so it's very, very free. But Alola Slash comes out now, threatens the Revenge Kill with either EQ or Tectonic Rage. So the Toad's brought out to set up the rocks as Kiyo goes to Sid. And we will get the set revealed here. Unfortunately for all the viewers at home, it's Defog. So what's very funny is the Comfy came out. If that was SD Decidueye, this is like the worst switching you could have made, because it was blowing your shit back. This for some D-Kiss chip. The Sandslash brought out, and here we also see the respect paid on both sides. Kiyo switches out just in case the Comfy outspeeds, and vice versa. So now we get Auroras out versus Toad. It should be a pretty free Blizzard here, because Toad should be slower than this Auroras. Or not should be slower, it just shouldn't have a way to hit it too hard. So Kiyo gets the rocks up there on the forced switch, and then gets a huge Blizzard hit off on the Comfy. And of course, like we said earlier, this kind of trade of damage is very, very crucial if you're trying to win this game as Kiyo, where you kind of just have to try and do a tank one to get big hits off. And versus the Comfy, the Mismagius is now the Comfy dies to an EQ, and the Incineroar is brought out here. Now this is Tectonic Rage, you simply get killed. Unfortunately, it either wasn't Tectonic, or Kiyo didn't want to burn the Z move there. So he does end up sacking his Sand Slash here to the Incineroar, as now the Comfy can come out. Got a hidden power ground, you can always take out the instant from there. So it's still generally threat neutralized. Now though, the Togedemaru is a very free switch in, as it does come out here, and you kind of have to just sack something. Kiyo making a very good read there though, staying in on the Iron Head risk, which from the calc I did earlier, it's like a 50% chance from that range for Tog Iron Head to KO. So good read. I do think I disagree with the follow-up here though of HP ground. Mostly because I don't really, I don't know. What move were they going for otherwise that keeps Togedemaru in but doesn't kill the Comfy, you know? Maybe it was still trying to suss out if it wasn't Scarf. But I think I would have just kissed there or gone for like Calm Mind personally. But it is what it is. As the Xatu will get a Toxic off on the Comfy here. So sweeping chance is probably gone. But Kiyo's not really looking to sweep with this Comfy. He's supposed to just try to use it again. To get damage where he can. And like he did, force that weird 50-50 on the Toad. So now, like we talked about once again, how the Aurorus did earlier versus the Comfy. Now Kiyo uses his Comfy to force some chip onto this Mismagius. And he can even preserve the Comfy, set the weather up here, so he's getting a little bit of chip. You know, get that extra turn of hail, really, is what we're seeing here. And now go Comfy, a Draining Kiss. So you got one extra turn of damage on it, compared to what you otherwise would have. So now the Mismagius will actually get KO'd here. Had Kiyo not gone Aurorus on the turn that he had, Mismagius would actually have been able to clean up the rest of his team. So well played by Kiyo. Sigilla comes out. Now I can see why I had that calc. So this is a very incredible play by Kiyo too, by the way. This was literally his, like, I wasn't gonna say his only out, but I think it kind of was. If the Togedemaru goes for your turn here, you always have to roost, because otherwise you die. So he roosts. And he plays to the guy not going for Zing Zap. So now he's back at full. And y'all remember what I showed y'all with Zing Zap not even being a 50% chance to KO? Yeah, run Wild Charge. This is why I've always been a little bit lower on Togedemaru, I think, than other people are in the tier. It's just so weak. So y'all even saw with the Comfy, it can't one-shot Comfy. Even with Life Orb Chip, there's still a roll. And then with Sigilif, Zing Zap is not able to one-shot guaranteed from full. This is why you'll see people run Wild Charge as the last slot instead of like Toxic or Nuzzle or Encore. Because they don't want this Mon getting that roll. But yeah, to explain again, Kiyo decided, you know what? My opponent's going to try and U-turn me, get that guaranteed damage so that the Zing Zap will kill. So I'm going to roost and just hope. Alternatively, the way it could have worked is he could have, if the opponent went for Zing Zap turn 1, obviously Kiyo lost. Or not turn 1, but that turn, Kiyo lost. He could have Heat Waved if he predicted that, of course, and he would have still been fine because the Toad would have died to E-Ball. But he ended up getting the route correct. So, very well done. And now we get game 2. And Kiyo's team is what I'm going to label as Brazilian offense. I'm pretty sure this team was built by the, at the time, the Gen 7 Brazilian jerk. So, that's something. It's Bandit Sneasel, Life Orb here, Specs here, Rocks Torterra, Defensive Z-King, and then, I think on the original team, it's actually Silvally Poison. But on this team, it's a Silvally Steel. I swear that I remember being Poison Valley originally, so I don't know if that's a change, or if this is just not the same team what I'm thinking of. Regardless, shouts to Brazilians that play in you. Love you guys. There's some Stampy. I mean, I kind of think it's bulky offense. That's what I'd label it as. Because Instant's probably going to be SD again. Sigil could be a myriad of sets. This is Scarf. This is probably just Sub-Bug Z. These are all like the things running through my head. The only reason I don't love it is because Silvally is a mon I hate. I think it's a fine mon, but I prefer it more on balance, where you got a nice, really reliable pivot. You can justify a Vaporeon pairing, keep this mon alive throughout the game. But that's just me. Metachamp potentially murks this team. It's faster than literally everything except Sigilif and a Scarf Pass. And Scarf Passiving isn't one-shotting you, so you can take the trade versus it and put it down. You could even go for Recover if you want to be 3 attacks Recover. And you can just Scout versus that if it's going for Gunk or U-turn, etc. Whereas with Sigil, I mean, it does have to land an Air Slash. And if it's bulky, I don't think it actually one-shots with Air Slash, which is kind of funny. This team, I wouldn't expect bulky Sigil if out of, just because there's the Vikavolt, and normally that's the Z Crystal Hog on this kind of team, but those are our thoughts once again. So we see Tort led versus the Incineroar, and Kiyo once again showcasing his ability to utilize Mons will just randomly live a hit. Stays in versus the Incin, gets a little bit of Quake damage. Very, very smart. And now here, he goes Silvally because Knock is pretty free. It's just a good mid ground. It would KO the Tort there. This also gives you a parting shot back to Tort, and Size is not going to be able to run anything. The best it would have is Ice Punch, and I wouldn't expect offensive Size out of that team. So Kiyo's able to get his rocks here, and then, kind of surprisingly, Stampy stays in. He gets Woodhammered. My guess is he expected a Synthesis to come out from Kiyo there, but instead he loses Size. And that's really good for opening up the Heliolisk later, because now that's one less Mon that can pivot around you. And now we're going to see Kiyo here utilize his Slowking Z Crystal to take reduced damage from the knockoff. And he's just going to be able to take out this Incineroar. He is going to try to slack off stall a little bit. This is a good play. Unfortunately, it is SD Incin. So he is just going to force the issue there, say, no, scald me, stop that. This will see the free switch into the Vikavolt here, or Passimian, because you just get the U-turn, force in like Medi here. So Silvally Steals actually ends up coming out though, which makes more sense. So that Steel comes out. Sigil is now the pivot, which I thought was kind of wild, but it makes sense because he's Cosmic Power, so he's trying to just use it as a free setup. The problem is Helios comes out very, very safely. And then the second problem is, instead of going for Roost, or not Roost, instead of going for Stored Power, he went for Roost. Because here's predicting there a Volt Switch. The problem is there's no reason for Kiyo to Volt Switch, since there's no electric immunity anyway. So he's just going to always take advantage of that to throw off these Specs Thunderbolts. And he doesn't have to overthink it. And now we're going to see Vikavolt try to kind of PP stall, which it sort of can, but it doesn't really lead to anything. Like, eventually Kiyo just goes into Gladion again, Mr. Silvally Steel on the Roost, and, maybe a Toxic is being threatened, so Silvally Steel switches in just to cover for that. Flamethrower instead. I'm going to see some of the weakest Flamethrowers traded of all time. 25%, very, very not damage. So now the Chammy Dodger comes out. Mr. Metacham is here. He's going to punch us in the face, and by punch it, I mean kick it, because it doesn't have close combat in Gen 7. He's going to high jump kick that. Vikavolt comes out here. Does get a little bit of an unfortunate flinch here. I don't think it really mattered at this point. Really, the game was always done, whether this died or not, because you're just going to like go Heliolisk next and throw off attacks. Eventually you'll get the Slowking to regenerate back to full and in 1v1 the Steel Valley. But instead of that happening, I'm going to have Metacham get the clean. Now we move on to our series versus Story and Drud. And in game 1 here, there is what I like to call the ideal comfy matchup. Now, it is contingent on what the comfy's hidden power is. Ground is the most common, and in this type of game, hidden power ground comfy is like the cleanest 6-0 you've ever seen. Yes, there are checks. Steelix and Incineroar both can stave it off a bit. Even Glalie can, because you're not one-shotting it. And Double Edge sends you back in time, but it is still a very good angle. You just get your hazards up. You're not really worried about the Glalie anyway. So, if we're looking for anything, it's going to be Stories play into a comfy win. On the flip side, this Executor is going to maul this team. Leaf Storm is picking up a KO or like 70% on this Wheezing every time it comes out. And there are turns to come out. The Stoys is not really threatening you. If Arrow mispredicts and tries to EQ a Steelix and instead EQs an Eggy, that's not good. Steelix is basically fodder. Helio maybe T-Bolts. Even Wheezing, if it's T-Spikes on a turn, you might be able to aggressively get this in and threaten Draco. But just a very, very scary mon. And Drud recognizes this and decides to lead off with the Beast. And turn 1, I mean, Helios can H-Voice. You see the trade of damage. Unfortunately, I do more damage than you. So Helios is gone immediately. That was kind of an annoying Pokemon. You had Steelix, but really the mons that would mid-ground into the Helio were both just going to get swifed. So very, very nice early turn. As we see now here, Stories gets a little bit into a tizzy trying to play around the Xatu for a bit. Actually, not really. It's more just they both didn't know what they wanted to have in. I think I was forgetting a different sequence there. The Xatu comes out, and you see now why this is the sequence. You see now why I was talking about with Xatu, how it's not the best T-Spike beater. At least I meant to talk about it last video. If I didn't, here you go. Both Garbodor and Weezing run very likely to poison attacks. So whether it's a Sludge Bomb from a Weezing or a Gunk Shot from a Garbodor, a lot of time this mon just comes out, takes 40%, gets poisoned, and now every time it's switching in, it's losing half its HP. Anyhow, like I said, the Xatu play kind of got Stories caught up. She was unable to really capitalize on the Xatu after the poison, so it stayed in for a few turns, eventually got a safe pivot out, and now Mr. Eggy's in, and this is again a free Leaf Storm, because this mon is not taking that hit, so they go Steelix as a mid-ground, not wanting to get draked with Wheeze, but also not wanting to risk the Comfey dying to Leaf Storm. Unfortunately, instead, the Comfey takes 71, which is still not very good, and it reveals Hidden Power Fire, which kind of means it's not really even that good this game anymore. The Glalie is sent out now, knowing a switch is likely. See a little spiky spike, and you can stay and just attack. The Stoiz is... if it scalds you, man. The Glalie is not necessary to winning this game, and trading a little bit of damage is good on this too, just to make sure that Simeon can late game clean. You're trying to, get those little win conditions. And Boom also means that this can't spin the spike, which is good. So now we see the pass just go for that CC. I would have knocked, but, that's just me. As the Weezer will now come out, Incineroar is probably the best mid-ground here, and Incin's role this game now is not nearly as... It's still good because Incin, truly walls the Comfey, but it's not as necessary. As we see a very good SD there. Just a nice prediction, knowing that a sack was likely, so you can get a free boost. Unfortunately, there is an arrow, so it's kind of a redundant boost, but anyhow, Weezing now comes out. And unfortunately for Stories, the Wisp Miss there isn't, that detrimental. It's more that this Weezing now walls your entire team, or not the Weezing, the Steelix, and it's just gonna keep swearing at you. It's gonna go for Curse. Again. And again. And again. Wait, no, let me wait for here. And again. So the Weezing curse is all... Not the Weezing, God! The Steelix! The Steelix curse is all the way up! Gets all of that boostin'. And now it's even able to two-shot the Weezing through the burn. And yeah, I mean, it is killable. You've got the Comfey to come out and over Hidden Power Fire. The problem is, it's not going to be enough. And Stories decides, you know what? I ain't even going to bother. Let me sack the arrow here just in case. Also, they could have crit. I don't think it would have mattered at that point, but yeah. Oh, right, no. They didn't go Comfey because I forgot. I remember watching it and thinking, oh, they could have gone Comfey first. No, it dies to hazards. So there you go. Now we get a game 2. And as I was looking at this from preview, I was kind of like, wow, what does Stories even win this game with? Because it's not really anything good on her team. Scrafty's always got to deal with Whimsicott, and you can slowly beat that down with Knocks and Drains, but it's kind of annoying. And in Togedemaru with Scarf, I mean, it's not bad, this matchup. It's just not amazing. And then on Drud's side, I actually feel like we've seen this team from Eternally in the last SMNU video, which means Z-Move here, Specs here, Scarf here, and just standard defensive guys here like SD and Sin. Whereas with Stories team, there's a little bit more set ambiguity. The Z Crystal user isn't necessarily known. It could be technically either of Drudagon or Delphox. You could be looking at a Scarf Fox here if you really wanted, but I wouldn't ever run it over Scarf Togue. You could be looking at Calm Mind Z Crystal here. You could be looking at a Z Devastating Drake Drud. It's a tough matchup for Stories, and I'm really not quite sure how you win it. So let's see what she tried to do to win this game. So we see a Weezing lead. Once again, T-Spike looked pretty good here because there's nothing to absorb him. So you just set him turn 1, and you're met with a Glare, and you're pretty content with that. So Drud now comes out here because you know they're not going to go for an Outrage or anything. And Stories just Devastating Drakes this and gets rid of it. I mean, it's just simple, man. And that's actually really good too. Because now your Togedemaru has one less mon that it has to worry about. This Drud was going to be one of those mons that didn't really get easily broken down. So, very nice. Now here, I don't really agree with Stealth Rock, but I get it. You're predicting Miss Mages to potentially come out, or Whimsicott. So you go for Rocks instead, and just gave Stoys a little bit of extra lefties recovery, which I wasn't a huge fan of, especially with this turn here, where you then get the play wrong of Miss Mages. It's just a mispredict. Those happen, but I don't know. Now that Miss Mages comes out, though, the story goes to the Drudagon here. And I mean, again, you can threaten your Rocks back. You can threaten an Outrage. So we see the Whimsicott brought out. And then the Drud sacked because the Drud's basically done its job at this point. This also lets you get Togedemaru in and you can just throw off a U-turn. You don't have to Iron Head because you've got 2 other resistances to the Moonblast. So you're not particularly concerned of that mon beating you down. And now the Scrafty comes out. And this Scrafty is going to slowly but surely beat this Whimsicott into the mud. Slowly, you will see this Whimsicott go from full health to no health. All because of his Scrafty. It's not even DD. It's not got, like, coverage. It is just bulk up Scrafty with dual stabs and no attack investment. And it does not care. Once again, a U-turn on this Toge. This time, Scrafty brought out once again. And again, I could Drain Punch here. I could Knock if I really wanted. Drain is probably a little bit better. Just in case they try to go, like... I was going to say try to go Instant, but that one is not coming out. But you try to get a little recovery. This time now, Delphox is brought out versus the Whimsicott. Just take that Moonblast. No reason to let your Togedemaru get super weakened. And Wheezing even, you may need to keep around at highish health, just in case the Incineroar becomes a bit of an issue. As we now see a little double switch, Scrafty brought it on the Incin. And like I said, this Whimsicott will be slowly beaten into the mud. It is now in Stealth Rock range as the Delphox comes out once again. We've seen this. It is Leftovers Delphox, so we could probably predict like a Wish Protect set maybe. As the Nature Power comes out, it does 19. Prankster Nature Power, just so y'all know, if you didn't, it actually does give Nature Power priority. So, you sometimes run it on certain teams if you just want a little extra speed. I don't really think I'd bother with it on this build, but it's not the worst option. As now, Delphox scouts out what the Toad wants to use, lets the its own Toad come out, and I can just U on the Ensign. It's not really a big deal. You got both Stoys and Wheezing at full. Delphox sack, though, was a little bit cleaner, so you're going to do that first, and then go to the Scrafty, because once again, I threaten a lot of things on your team. Scrafty has slowly become a huge problem. Without having to bulk up a single damn time, this mod has slowly been able to get its positioning to where it's actually quite menacing, and you're going to be able to knock the Stoys the next turn and KO it. So you're in a great spot. You're not really worried about anything here. The Scald comes out, and that does a decent amount with Torrent, but it doesn't really matter. And this is where I was like, oh, well, this wins if this isn't Gleam Mismagus. And when I went Togedemaru first, I thought, oh, it's just not Gleam Mismagus. This is just a Scrafty game. This is just a Scrafty game. And then the Mismagus came out and gleamed, and I was like, oh, they had Gleam the whole time. Which tells me that I don't know, man, is this just not the damage roll I think it is? Is it just not the damage roll I think it is? And then I check here, and it's not. So, yeah, they literally had to get the damage with the Super Fang off earlier, but I thought it was really funny. We see a flinch here. I don't actually know if this was a misplay to stay in or not, and I say that because I don't know if it mattered. I would have always gone Instant first, though, and kept Missy at full, because with Magus at full, I think you actually kind of have a shot. They were going for damage on Togedemaru. They would have killed if they got the Shadow Ball off, and they would have just won. But maybe you go Instant first and then, like, try to double into Mismagus. I think that's probably a little bit cleaner. And unfortunately, the route Drud took led himself vulnerable to getting haxed. And as a result, he doesn't win. Now, I will say, the way this endgame played out, there were a lot of motions going through. I'm like, oh, he sword stances. But it doesn't actually matter because the Stoys will be faster anyway. But, you know, okay, sure. And then the Stoys comes out, takes Rock Chip, and I'm like, oh, the Incineroar moved first. What the hell? And then the Stoys lived comfortably, and then it killed with Scald. So I don't know what happened there. It's obviously a pretty bulky Blastoise, which is why it took it so well, but was also outsped. Wow. I think it's really funny. Drud actually still had winning odds on the last turn. He just had to crit. So the SD was a phenomenal play in the context of this game, even. And I think it makes sense always anyway. You play to the fact that maybe they're just not running a normal Blastoise. Most Blastoise will run up to like 242 speed because you creep Incineroar, and then maybe, you know, maybe you outspeed something that's trying to outspeed Incineroar. So, when you have a mon as dominant as Mr. WrestleCat, you get a lot of mons EVing. Even like Seismitoad likes to EV for Incin. As we talked about, Comfy will EV for Incin. Lots of mons base their entire speed investment around that mon. And then we get game 3 of their series. And I look into this and I said there is no chance in hell that Stories beats this team. Because there is a Sigilif and you have brought Mono lose to Sigilif. And it's not that simple. It's not like the team just gets snack wrapped by it necessarily. There are sets that you'll take on better than others. But I just looked at the build and I'm like, wow, your entire counterplay to Sigil is Pursuit Aerodactyl. But what would you say if I told you that there is not a Pursuit Aerodactyl on that team? Yeah, and it makes sense when you look at the build. There's really not an obvious Z user otherwise. Arrow can run Z on the, or Pursuit, I mean, on the Z crystal sets. It's just not as strong as Banded. And so you don't see it as much. A little bit worse. But it's very possible. But, yeah, the Sigilif is just a menace. No Steel type into Sigil. Like, this is why I think you need a Steel on every team. Whether it's Steelix, whether it's Togedemaru, or even if it's a little doo-doo Pokemon, Silvally Steel. I think you want something. Yes, it learns Heat Wave. Newsflash, that's not actually the best set. The best set nowadays is actually like Mono Air Slash, or maybe Stored Power. But it doesn't really run the Coverage Beast sets as often as it used to. So Steel type's generally actually pretty reliable at checking, even Aerodactyl. So, I mean, Arrow's a great check to it still. Like, the most common set you do actually take on pretty decently. It just is so greedy. So anyhow, I'm going to look to see the Sigil do a lot of work. Once again, it's actually like a great comfy matchup if you're Hidden Power Ground, because again, you just pop those. So we're going to see Stories try to play to the comfy. We'll see Drud try to play to the Sigil. Turn 1, just like with the Eternally game, we see an Incineroar staying on a Seismitoad because you know they ain't never going for no Scald turn 1. And now this gives you Sigil anyway turn 2. Whether they rock up, whether they Scald, whether they do whatever. And so yeah, this is the funniest part. I saw the arrow come out, I was like, oh, it's getting pursued, right? And then it wasn't. But they EQ, and Story's EQ here is actually really good because, again, she's trying to play to the comfy. So you want to weaken the Steelix as much as you can. This is now very easily in range of a +1 hidden power. So that was very nicely done. This was less nicely done in my view. I don't think you would have used Sceptile here, but you got it a free switch and it actually goes incredibly for her. Because she gets this Overgrow boosted Giga Drain into that brap Leaf Storm. And yeah, the Incineroar is just gone. So by turn 8, one of the comfy checks is just straight up fainted. The other is at half HP. So if you want to talk about setting up a comfy for success, I mean, she's done it really well. It was a better play than I thought it was going to be as I was watching the replay. I thought personally just go like Yama on the Steelix and be chilling, but hey, tactical Overgrow working very nicely. Now Outer gets a burn on the Steelix and again, setting up success for that comfy later on. You're just trying to make sure the Steelix can't do anything, and she actually ends up just straight up beating the Elix 1v1. I kind of thought maybe a Defog would come out from the Rotom here, but instead she just opts to KO the Steelix, which I think is fine. It also makes it easier for Arrow later on. And now the Pissimian comes out, and it's a kind of a tricky bit because your fighting checks on this team aren't great. It's Comfy and Rotom. You know, it's not the worst, but it's not the greatest either. As we also see the Sigil is revealed to be Z, so this is going to be a bit of a threat. You are forced into roosting versus the Toad, but you'll always be able to win this 1v1, which is pretty nice for you. Eventually, you know, get to enough HP to where Scald does nothing. You boost, now you roost as the arrow comes out. As the arrow didn't come out there, guys. I am so sorry. I thought the arrow came out, but it didn't. As, yeah, we see Drud greeting as much as they can. Eventually, the Toad does end up going down. I got tired of seeing that dumb frog still alive. As the arrow comes out here, if you really wanted, you could T-Wave. That's what we call a bad move. And yeah, you see the Sky Strike finally revealed. It's not banded. Just 500 bajillion. Now that Sigilif was not tanking that. So sacking the Stories is always wise there. And you know, you may think Drud's in a bad spot, but keep in mind, a lot of Stories' team has been quite weakened. She still has the Sigil, and like we said too, the fighting checks are kind of porous. The Pissimian is really good. So there's still very obvious winning odds here. Arrow comes back out. You're gonna have to always go pass here, because like it's really your only switching. And Story's able to take advantage of the switch, go for a little roosty roost. I think if you T-wave the arrow there, by the way, this is like game set match. Now the Comfy comes out, Garb comes in, and unfortunately for Stories, they do go for hidden power. It is a very specially defensive Garbodor though, so it yums that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and just KOs Comfy. And it's kind of funny because the Pissimian, I think, is in Draining Kiss range. If I'm remembering the calc right, it's like you tank 1 if you're like 81% or higher. So had that Garb not lived, I think the Comfy might have been able to pull it out right there. It still would have probably come down to some weirdness with a Sigilif, but still. And now, Yama being used to tank a CC. Just one. That's all it needed to do. Just tank that one. As now the Rotom comes out. Takes a little bit more damage. And it's going to be able to get, you know, be able to get something going for itself. Switches here, sack the Yama. Because now, next time it comes in, You're seeing, again, this is obviously not Cobra Berry with how it's being played, but it comes out here and gets his little Weaky Berry heal. So now you're out of range of the Passimian. You could Volt here. Hex is a little bit better, though. You're always going to be able to two-shot that. As they switch here to Arrow to avoid taking Air Slash chip or the Z move chip. So it's a very good sack. The problem is it's just not enough at this point. And with the extra Stealth Rock damage and a little bit of Air Slash chip, this flinch is largely inconsequential because knockoff would have KO'd anyway from the Passimian. But, I mean, again, I still think optimal lines were taken here, and so I think we can always appreciate that. So this entire series was incredibly close. I mean, right here. Okay, game 1 was not, but game 2 was really close, game 3 was really close, and even the Kiyo series. Okay, well, this wasn't close, but this was really close. 1%, this could be 1 HP. So once again, we got some really good SM games. I hope you guys enjoyed. As I said, make sure, subscribe if not already subscribed. You're going to get a ton more of this type of content going forward. If you are subscribed, ring that bell. Don't miss these. These videos are just as important as all the others. Okay? I'd say look me in the eye, but the camera's not on. But look me in the eye. Pretend like it is. Hit that bell. Leave a like. Comment down below what your favorite SM Pokemon is. I'm out. Peace.